Mark Bauerlein, thanks for joining me.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. I love here at ISI headquarters. I've been here before, and it's a nice fall day. I was actually here in the president's office at the time. Jeff Nelson was the leader at the time. There was a photograph on the wall, big wide-angle photograph that I ended up writing about a piece. It was a picture of Robert Frost giving a poetry reading at the University of Detroit in 1962. And the place was packed. It was the basketball arena. There must have been 10,000 people, all in the stands and in the basketball courts. The basketball goals were pushed back, and they had seats lined up. And there was this old white-haired man sitting at a podium up on a stage by himself. And 10,000 college kids wanted to go hear a poet. It was a good time.
Well, that's amazing. And I get the sense that would not be the case today. And I know you've written about this in some of your books about the dumbest generation. And you're a professor of English and a man of liberal arts and humane letters. I'd be curious to know, and you're doing this now as a trustee at the New College of Florida, what's required to revive an interest in the liberal arts amongst the broad swath of the American public and college students, and what's required to get us there so that we might once again have a poet who can fill out a full arena?
What I would say is that the conditions are there already. It is the institutions that are not prepared to capitalize on those conditions, not all of them, at least. And the big story here is the revival of classical education at the primary and secondary levels. We've got schools opening in faraway places who say we're going to teach Latin, we're going to do Western Civ, we're going to make, again, a traditionalist model of the softer sides of the curriculum. We do the technology, the math and science, of course, but history, arts, music, literature, civics, those are going to be taught on a classical model, and foreign languages, of course. And what's happened in those schools, they open a school, they've got a few classes, a few grades, not very many teachers, and they end up having to create a waiting list of 400 kids, 2 years later. The demand for a classical model is out there, where they read long books, they take Latin, and they do French, they memorize. In a school my son attended, one of the 8th grade projects was memorizing the book of Ephesians in the Bible. So lots of memorization and recitation going on the old-fashioned way. And the thing is, the demand is out there. And I keep waiting for, it's been going on 10 or 15 years. This classical school movement has been happening. One of the early ones was a charter school network, the Great Hearts Academies. Started in Arizona, they've expanded to Texas, and I think they're moving into Florida, a couple of other states. But they've got a 15,000 student waiting list on these charter schools. And they're a big network. I mean, they've got about 40 or 50 schools. And I keep waiting for the demand to slow down. But I was just talking to a fellow last week who said in 2018, they opened their first classical school in Austin, Texas. Now they have 5, and they've got a 4,500 student waiting list. So the demand just keeps growing because parents see, I like the old-fashioned way, reading, writing, and arithmetic. I want my students studying Julius Caesar. I don't want them to be studying about some contemporary, political or cultural issue that doesn't really get down to the big questions. The long reach, getting a historical sense of the past, which T.S. Eliot thought was so crucial to the formation of any modern sensibility. So the goal for us, and ISI, you've been there throughout. You guys are 70 years old plus, and you maintained, right, the proper sense of things. And while the education world, higher education and primary, secondary, have been going like this and this, new fads, new trends all the time, innovation, that's what it's all about. No, most change is bad. That's what makes us conservatives. We understand this. And to fetishize change and originality and innovation only leads you into a lot of stupid decisions. And that's what we've seen happening in education for so long. ISI, nope. We are about the tradition. We're about Western civ. We are about the American founding. We're about Shakespeare and Machiavelli and all the greats. And I think that's why you've survived, because you held to the ideals. You haven't bent to political wins very much, and that's a formula for success. And I think that the classical education movement we're seeing now reaping harvests at the higher ed level now, because a lot of liberal arts colleges are suffering on enrollments. Gen Z is smaller than the millennials. And there's a lot of suspicion of higher education out there that you didn't have 10 years ago. So not as many are really choosing college as an automatic option. But the more conservative, traditionalist liberal arts campuses, especially those with a religious orientation like Belmont Abbey and Benedictine and Ave Maria, University of Dallas, they're seeing their enrollments doing very well. Okay? They are the counterculture at this point. And they're popular. Okay? They're at capacity. Belmont Abbey takes, I think they take about 1,500 students. They can't take any more. So the applications have gone up. They've been more selective, but they don't want to get bigger. They don't want to get bigger. They like their size. So I think that we're getting empirical evidence of the value of these things, while we see a lot of evidence that those even religious institutions that have gone secular, they've tried to mimic the way of outer America, the culture of the United States. And they've lost market share. Well, why wouldn't they lose it? Why should I go to your school? You're just like every other school here.
Right.
No, dare to be different, you guys. Let's follow the 60s model, right? In our methods, not in our beliefs.
Right, yeah, and it's not just the beliefs, the classical beliefs in Western civilization, trying to teach and perpetuate the American founding and its principles to a next generation, but also keeping high standards.
High standards. Well, this is what happens when you teach the great books, right? You are raising the bar on everything, okay? And the accusation that Western Civ is conservative or reactionary, one would say, really? Voltaire? Voltaire was a reactionary, right? Karl Marx, right? Nietzsche? These guys are in the canon.
Absolutely.
Of Western civilization. And they ought to be read. Western Civ is conservative in that it says we learn from the past. We get our best ideas, our best taste on models from the past. We think that the test of time is probably better than any contemporary test that we would apply to things. We also understand ourselves as it were, we're a transitional moment. We the Russell Kirk line, I think it was Kirk, or Burke. We're in a contract with our ancestors and with the unborn, right? And we're a link in the chain. We must understand ourselves in that way. And the chain goes way, way back. And what the past does, what the tradition does, is it presents young people with resources, equipment for living. Yeah, you got your silly little high school romance and you've broken up and you're rejected, life is over, I'll never meet someone like this ever again. Well, let's try reading some great love stories here. You have disappointments, you didn't get that job. How about reading Death of a Salesman? Okay, so you are giving kids sort of background material against which they can absorb their experience in a meaningful way that also brings some maturity about things. And of course, there's also the issue of identification. You read to identify with figures. You identify with Hector when he's fighting his battles, being that noble son, father, husband, and leader of the Trojans. You identify him when he's outside the walls and he sees that point of light coming toward him. That's Achilles, and he's afraid, right? He shakes, but he will not flee. He will not go in. They're begging him, get inside, get inside. He won't. He can't. Those are moments in which young men can form some character out of what they read, and we want them to do it out of those materials. We don't want them to do it out of garbage music and idiotic sports celebrities and the rest.
Wow, I mean, it's amazing insights that you're offering, and I wonder, you're retired from being a professor, but now you have this amazing opportunity as a trustee at the New College of Florida. So I'm wondering how you're bringing some of these insights in this opportunistic moment to what's the secret sauce for turning New College of Florida around, and how could it serve as a model for other universities who are interested in this moment of reform?
New College had many great things about it. One, they don't have grades, and I like that. At New College, small college, no grades, they write narrative evaluations of students. And we know grade inflation makes grades unreliable at this point. In about 1960, you know what the most common grade is? What was in higher education? It was a C. And you know what I'm going to say? Now it's an A. A or A minus make up about 45%. That was the last time I looked a few years ago. 45% of all college grades. That means the A has become, to a great extent, pretty meaningless at this point. Also, you had small teacher-faculty-student ratio. Students had the capacity to do a lot of independent study, so it would work for that kind of self-motivated student, not for a student who needs a lot of direction, who needs the guidepost, not the place for that kind of student. The problem is that there was a strong ideological turn at New College. It was hard left. But let me put it this way. If it were a hard left campus that had swelling enrollments, that was very popular in the state, and the finances were strong, the grounds were clean and lovely and beautiful. It's in a beautiful spot right on the Sarasota there on the bay. But that wasn't the case. New College should have 1,500 to 1,800 students, like Williams College, say, or Amherst. It only had 680 students when we were there. There was also a bad gender breakdown. I think it was about 70% female, 30% male. It's not a healthy situation in a closed environment like that. Also, the finances were a mess on the campus, and the grounds were shabby and decrepit. There was mold in the buildings. Elevators didn't work. The greenhouse, you didn't want to go inside. It was dangerous there. So the campus demanded some external pressure to come in and say, we've got to fix this place. Now, we approached the ideological factor right off the bat. No DEI, done. And why did we do that? Not for political reasons, but because DEI is contrary to academic freedom. Mm-hmm. To require an assistant professor of chemistry to apply for the job, to become that assistant professor and write a diversity statement, this is a political loyalty oath. It invites mendacity from people who are desperate to get jobs. It's got to go. This is not academic freedom. This is not freedom of conscience. So we were the first ones, I think, to eliminate DEI from a college campus. The Florida legislature later then eliminated it from all campuses. Many other states have done the same thing. It's wonderful. Governors and legislatures, they finally woke up and said, this is very bad. Do not buy those happy words, diversity, equity, inclusion. They're ideological weapons, and they are used against people of all kinds. So that was something we did. We fired the president because she wouldn't really been the right person to lead the change. We closed the gender studies department because gender studies, well, a few reasons. One, it's such a highly politicized term. And it's also, I mean, I'll give you an academic argument if it doesn't bore your listeners, but the term gender is a destabilizing term. Gender is like queer. To queer something is to shake it up, to take away its norms, its fundamentals, its premises, to challenge its axioms like the difference between male and female. To queer that difference is to fudge it, to make it confusing and illegitimate as well. So it's a destabilizing point. Judith Butler's book, famous book, was Gender Trouble. Mm-hmm. Gender causes trouble, right? Gender shakes up bourgeois norms, expectations about sexuality. You can't base a discipline on a concept that is transgressive and subversive. Those are their words. Their words. It shakes a foundation. You can't build a discipline on a foundation that is anti-foundational. You won't get right norms of peer review. You will get politics then entering in because academic norms can't make the discipline function in coherent ways. Do your gender stuff in English, in history, in sociology, where you have foundational concepts at work. That was my argument for shutting down gender studies. Of course, they would say, it's all just political. It's a hostile takeover. Oh, fine, as if you haven't been engaged in a hostile takeover for 50 years. You guys, give me a break. I mean, when they would say, you're banning books. Wait, you're gonna talk about banning books? You won't let us teach Huck Finn anymore. Right. It's got the N-word. Frederick Douglass, it's got the N-word. I taught those books for 20 years, and I still would if I were teaching, because they're not going to tell me what to teach. But I would probably get in trouble for doing so. So really, you're not the ones to talk about censorship. Please, look in the mirror first. So at New College, then the new president, Richard Corcoran, he has ties to DeSantis, the legislature. He got large contracts, large money coming in. The grounds look beautiful at this point. We got in the mold out of the dorms. New greenhouse is being built, contracts. And we're changing the curriculum to general ed, very traditionalist, kind of Western civ, old fashioned. There's a techne side, which is more current technology stuff, data science, but there's a logos side as well. On the logos side will be courses that are very general, broad, Western civ, good old-fashioned courses, which are just the kind of courses that Michel Foucault used to teach. If you look at, the beloved Foucault of the gender theorists, you look at his syllabi, Sophocles, ancient poetry, St. Augustine, medieval philosophy, the Enlightenment. It's a totally great books, traditionalist formation. Derrida, the founder of deconstruction, he got the exact same classical formation as well. And they both said, before you do your critiques, your radical kind of deconstructions of this and that, you got to learn the basics.
You have to understand.
You have to do the tradition. Then, at a later, more advanced stage, we can tinker it, we can examine it, we can problematize it. But first, get the knowledge. Do your homework.
Those are great, tried and true life lessons. So we wish you continued success at New College and keep up the good work. And thanks for joining me.
Thanks for ISI. We want to get. I think they started a small chapter.
They did.
Down at New College. They did. Good to hear. Good to hear. Well, I anytime those guys down there want me to come and can help spread the word, I'm happy to do so.
Excellent. Fantastic.